So we took 160 Imperial Guardsmen and more to win the largest tournament in Warhammer every single year. This is kind of crazy. Now, so this was the Las Vegas Open, and I'm just going to give a big shout out to Wesley St. Hines, otherwise known as Nemo the Fish, because he played an off-meta list that is going to absolutely shock people. People are going to say, oh, this list is terrible, blah, blah, blah. No, the list was awesome, and the guy who piloted it was a rock star. And I'm going to use this as a really great example to teach how the meta doesn't define what you have to play, because as Mr. Nemo himself proved to us, you can run your own creativity and your own brilliance to great effect, regardless of what other players are thinking is correct. So regardless of what I say, regardless of what our war says, regardless of what any of the other talking heads on the internet say, your army can work if you approach it with the correct plan and you implement that plan correctly. So let's get into it. I'm going to tell you all about his list. I'm going to tell you how it worked, and I'm going to tell you why it worked in this particular tournament. I'm also going to walk you through his matchups. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about some things about the meta in general, which I think most of us need to hear when it comes to list building. So guys, we're talking about the Las Vegas Open, which is a 10-round super major, which is absolutely insane. Historically, it's the largest tournament in the world. This year, it was a little bit smaller. It was actually half the size of it as it was last year. So last year, it was almost 1,300 people. This year, it was almost 600 people. This was a little bit weird because technically last year's LVO was also this year because it was in February. Typically, it's in February every year, but since the introduction of the WCW, now the WCW will actually be the final event of the ITC season. They have moved the LVO to October, which is a little bit interesting. But anyway, it's fine. So since they had it twice in 1 year, that's why attendance was probably like cut in half, which is a little bit whatever. Anyway, so this was a amazing tournament with crazy players. There were some insane competition there. Every single person there played for 6 rounds, and then there was a shadow round, and then there was a top cut for the last 3 rounds. So the guy who the finals was round number 10, which is absolutely crazy. It was streamed in several different places. I know for a fact it was War Games Live, Tabletop Live. There's a Warhammer official stream as well, and I'm really sorry. I'm sure there were other streamers there, but if I didn't see you, and I just didn't know if you were streaming. So I'm not trying to exclude anyone. Those were the only streams I happened to see. So it was a pretty awesome tournament. Now let's get into Mr. Nemo's list itself. So he ran Recon Guard. This is incredibly impressive and incredibly interesting recon element, because a lot of people thought that, oh, this detachment's garbage, you can't run this detachment. And this is something I hear very often when people look at a codex. They'll be like, oh, there's only one playable detachment, or there's no playable detachments. Dark Angels players. There's lots of playable detachments, and with a little bit of creativity and ingenuity, you can make basically anything work. So Recon Guard, in this detachment, basically all of your Astra Militarum Walker units and regiment models, which is effectively all of your infantry and like your mounted guys. That's basically what your regiment models are. They always have the benefit of color, and if they have the benefit of cover for any other reason, such as having cover, then you also get to improve the save characteristic of that model by 1. So you have a 5-up armor save Imperial Guardsmen, and they're always counting as cover, so they go to effectively 5-up in covers, roughly a 4-up. And then you just put them in a ruin so that they are also getting cover. Now they're getting a 4-up armor save with cover, so effectively a 3-up armor save. And then you can also give them the order take cover, I believe it is. So because Imperial Guard, they give orders for the army, which will give them +1 to their armor save, giving them an effective 3+ armor save with cover on a T3 1 wound guardsman. And this creates a huge dilemma for a dramatic amount of armies in the game, because the meta currently is teched for killing knights and it's killing elites, but no one's really paying attention to hordes. This is going to cause some people to freaking wake up for the World Championships, I'm sure, because this is something that's going to be happening. It's also one of the reasons why I think the red tide for Berserker Warband World Eaters is actually very impressive, and why I actually think there's some play for various versions of Green Tide Orcs right now, because the Horde meta really counters what's going on. So I'm actually really excited to see this guy do so well, and we're going to talk a little more in depth about how his army operates, and then I'm going to walk you through the matchups that he had. So he was running 3 Kading Castellans. And these guys, their ability basically gives fallback and shoot to the unit. and it will give them sustained hits. So they're gonna dramatically increase the output of certain models. Now these can only be attached to the Cadian shock troops and to Death Korps of Krieg models, or I'm sorry, not Death Korps of Krieg model. Forgive me. To Casterkin, I believe is what they attach to. So they're pretty obviously going to be going with the Cadian command squads. There you go. That's just the way it is. Then you're going to have the Cadian command, or not the Cadian command, the Cadian shock troops. Then you have Cadian command squads, and there's 3 of them. These guys all have a medic, which effectively gives them regenerate D3 models in the command phase that are non-character models. And then they also add a little bit of firepower, and they also are going to have a Voxcaster, which lets them shout an order 24 inches away. So basically everything in the army will always be ordered, seeing as all these big blobs are going to have minimum 2 orders to give out. You're going to have Gaunt's Ghost, which is the uppy-downy, lone-up, kind of like infiltrating unit. Then you've got Ursula Creed, who gives 2 orders and discounts a stratagem. So there's just orders for literally everything. You're going to have 4 20-man blobs of Cadian shock troops. Now, these Cadian shock troops have, their ability is they get sticky. There's a melt gun, there's a few plasma guns, but it's mainly just las guns, and they're basically just guardsmen bodies. The thing about guardsmen bodies, though, is they got OC2. That's a lot. And with one of these command squads, they have a regimental standard, which will add 1 OC to the bodies. So this guy is going to have crazy amounts of OC in this army. He's going to be flooding these objectives. And since they're led by the Cadian command squads, they're going to be able to do regeneration shenanigans. So he can do things where, like, he puts 1 model on an objective, you shoot them, he kills 1 model off, you can't double activate into the unit, then he can regenerate it back onto the objective in his command phase to just cause lots of shenanigans. And then you're going to have 2x10 jungle fighters, which is just a guardsman who gets to scout, and +1 wound when they charge, which is one of the most useless abilities in the game for a guardsman. Then you've got 4x10 Death Korps of Krieg. Now, Death Korps of Krieg get the ability to get +1 to hit when they're under starting strength, but they also have a medic pack themselves, which gives them regenerate D3 models. And then you have 2 20-man blobs of Death Korps of Krieg. They get the +1 to hit if they're under starting strength, +1 to wound if they're under half starting strength. And these 20-man blobs will have 2 of those med packs, which gives them a D3 +1 resurrection in the command phase. So he's got models regenerating freaking everywhere. In addition to this, he's backed up by 2 10-man squads of Rough Riders. These are the guys who actually hit crazy hard in melee, and they are regimental, which means they have a crazy good armor save. Isn't that interesting? So these guys are going to go up to that 3-up armor save basically at all times, which is a lot. It's actually a lot. Now, you can't use the take cover order to get them to say better than a 3-up, so they can't get 2-up armor saves, which is bless, but it is very, very, very powerful. And with the detachment rule, these guys are basically always going to be saving on 3s against AP0, and you can basically always just, for free, give them an extra 3 inches to the movement characteristic, or you can give them weapon skills so they're hitting on 2s in melee, which makes them disgusting with their Melta lances. And then lastly, he's got 1 Scout Sentinel for a little scouting action and giving a few rerolls out there. So a lot of our units in this. Now, the thing you got to understand about this army in particular is basically everything is always going to be able to fall back, shoot, or fall back, shoot, and charge. So they've got a couple stratagems. They've got one that can just give precision to ranged weapons, which is very good if you're trying to get characters, because these are big blobs with a lot of shooting, including melta guns and plasma guns, which 100% can be getting sustained hits or +1 to hit, and lots of different things like that. And these can absolutely start pop off to kill some of the leaders that you're not expecting to lose in shooting. Then he's got a 1 CP stratagem, which will give a -1 to hit to a unit if it's the closest eligible target, and a 6-up Fiona Pain to the models inside of it, which is also a massive durability boost on some of these massive blobs. They have a stratagem for it called Draw Them Out, which will give them a reactive move of 6 inches, which can be very, very powerful. Tanglefoot Grenades. 1 unit can just force an enemy unit to be -2 to charge, which is really screws up some melee armies' plans when they're trying to get into these big blobs. 1 CP Scramble Fields, and this allows them to, on demand, just choose one of their units and say, you know what? You cannot set up anywhere within 12 inches of me, which is incredibly powerful on a 20-man blob of guardsmen. It can basically screen the entire battlefield for 1 CP for deep strikes, and that can really screw opponents who are relying on deep strikes. And this will operate just like the Infiltrator's ability, so that 6-inch deep strikes don't work, anything like that. It's very, very powerful, and it is a huge, huge problem for your opponents. Then lastly, you've got the Scouting Outriders for 1 CP, and this is going to allow you to pick a unit up and return them to strategic reserves. Now, nothing here has deep strikes, so it is coming in from strat reserves, but it is definitely something that needs to be respected and paid attention to. So that is the Recon Guard. Now let's go through some of his matchups. Okay, so getting into our best friends matchups for the LVO, he had 10 rounds of Warhammer. 10 rounds of freaking Warhammer. Round number 1 was a 91-45 win into the new Shadow Mark Talon detachment. And it is worth noting that the LVO did FAQ that Shadow Mark Talon will get the +1 to wound for a super oath of moment. And he absolutely obliterated these guys. This is actually fairly surprising to me. I figured that Shadow Mark Talon would actually have very good play into the Guardsmen because they actually have the ability to get increased AP. They've got plenty of blast in the forms of Centurions or uppy downy. But this was a brutal, brutal massacre here. They've also got really good melee in the forms of like Vanguard bets, things like that. Then we go into round 2. This is a 100-point win into 126 into Custodes. Now this honestly makes sense to me because at a certain point, when you're shooting enough plasma guns and melta guns, you're going to start killing Custodes, and there's just no way these Custodes are going to be clearing massive blobs and hordes of guardsmen like this, especially when they're going to be regenerating. Especially when they can give -2 to be charged, and they can do reactive moves to screw up charges. I mean, heck, you can do a reactive move 6 inches away and then give -2 to charge, which basically makes these blobs unchargeable by a lot of melee armies, especially Custodes, who have a very, very limited amount of good engagement. Then you've got the round 3, which is 100 points, another 100-point win into a 67. Now, this was a combined arms guard, more of a traditional Lehman Russ's, Rogodorn's combined arms Imperial Guards army. And yeah, they can't handle the blobs. And we go round 4. This is where we're starting to get a little closer. So 87 into 70 against the Blood Angels. This was a relatively traditional Blood Angel list. They did have their Rage Fueled Captain, a couple things like that. As you can see, though, this one was a little bit closer because Blood Angels do have the volume to handle these types of guards' bodies. I believe this is probably an example of Mr. Nemo just going ahead and out-skilling his opponent. We go into round number 5. This was 89-59 into Tau, and it is worth noting that this was against Kyle Grundy, who is one of, if not the best ranked Tau player in the world. So this was one where it just shows, hey, Nemo was a great player, and his list crushed, so he did awesome work. Then we had Nemo's closest match, which was a deadlocked draw. Now, this was 76-76 into Thousand Suns, specifically Thousand Suns, who were running 30 Terminators, Scarabicol Terminators, in the Rubrique Phalanx. And if you guys haven't seen this army, you really, really need to play against this army because it is extremely tricky. I actually played against it my very first time, and I was not expecting the output, and I got smashed by it. So I'm glad I had that experience. Shout out to whoever that guy on TTS was, because you educated me and I appreciate you. And so now I'm going to be ready to play against it. But if you're not prepared for what that Terminator list can do, you're in trouble. So get prepped. Well, this was a dead draw. And interestingly enough, in one of the weirdest examples of pairings in Warhammer history, they actually had to play again in the very next round because of just the way the pairings fell through the shadow round and everything. And so they played again, and this time it was a 96-91 match. This was still a win to the Guard, but it was still crazy, crazy close. So as we can see, the 30 Scarabicol Terminators probably have a pretty dang great matchup into the Guardsmen, or at least a very, very close matchup. So they had a dead draw on one, and then he won by 5 in the second. This is a matchup that can probably go either way. Then we went 90 into 80 against Tau, and this was against, Oh man, I can't remember his name. Glenn Cita is his nickname. Durante, maybe? Anyway, he's a very fantastic Tau player. I know he actually was a mercenary for Team Slovakia at the WTC last year. And they're all really good friends. So they were cheering him on in the Discord. It's really cool to see. And then we have, in round number 9, he was playing against Folger Piles, who is the current reigning world champion for the World Championships of Warhammer. And this was a 91 into 85 Eldar match. Now, this was a really fun match to watch on stream. There were some crazy things that happened in this game, and it ended up being very close. Folger Piles is an incredibly good player, and I just really enjoyed watching the majesty of the match. Then lastly, we go into round 10, and this was a 96 into 44 Death Watch. Now, I was surprised by the disparity of this, to be honest with you. I didn't think it would be this far apart, but I kind of assumed the army would win. Could have gone either way though, seeing as the Death Watch have the ability to just give their entire army 2 rerolls with the Tome of or 2 Oath of Moment targets with the Tome of Ectoclades. They can give the entire army sustained hits. I was actually pretty surprised that they didn't score better than this one. But this was very exciting. So good shout out to Nemo. So I'm going to talk about why his list actually performs really well into this meta. Let's go ahead and get this done now. So let's first off define like what is the current meta. Remember, meta is most effective tactics available, or it could be like whatever, or the metagame state. A lot of people would want to define the word in different ways, but basically it's just like, what are people playing? What is really good right now? That's more or less what it means, right? And so we just got out of a meta where big knights were everything. You had to be able to handle Imperial Knights. You had to be able to handle Chaos Knights. Now that Imperial Knights are much easier to kill, people aren't quite as worried about killing big knights. Of course, Chaos Knights are still stomping around as probably, if not the best, close to the best army in the game. So Chaos Knights are still exceptionally powerful, so you still have to be able to kill big knights. And Imperial Knights, while we don't have much data on them yet, they're still really good. They're just easier to kill. Then you got to be really worried about a lot of elites. So elites are going to be defined as things anywhere from like, Blade Guard Veterans, Sword Brethren, or Terminators, Death Shroud Terminators. That 3 to 4 wound range. Toughness is going to range anywhere between 4 and 7. This is what's called the anti-elite meta. You have to be able to handle that elite profile. Then you've got the MSU meta, and this is something like Eldar or Drukhari. Tons of little 5-man units just running all over the place. You have to have the activations to handle all of those models. And so these are really what people are considering in meta. But there's another part of the meta that most people aren't really paying attention to, and that is hordes. What happens when I slap 200 bodies in front of you? And I guarantee you over the course of Nemo's games, when he's regenerating D3 models or D3+1 models in like 7 or so, whatever of his units, there's going to be more than 200 guardsmen that hit this table every single time, not counting the 20 horsemen and all these things. So basically what Nemo did is he took a calculated chance, and he said, you know what, everyone's ready to kill everything, but no one is specializing into killing a 1-wound T3 model, especially not a 1-wound T3 model who happens to have a 3-up armor save with cover. That's actually dirty and 100% disgusting. So that's a big problem for a lot of people. Just be aware. Like, if you're not able to kill these guardsmen, you're not killing these guardsmen. I mean, even if you have tons of AP1 shooting, it's not going to mean anything because these guys are a 3-up armor saving cover. So you're just not going to be killing these blobs, even with the blast, like you think you might be killing them. I mean, it's kind of hilarious when you really think about it, but these guys are 3-up with cover, which means you have guardsmen who are saving on 5-ups against freaking Forge Fiends. That's bonkers. That's actually brutal. And then you look at a lot of armies that do have high volumes of fires, things like Votann. Well, Votann, even though they got more sustained hits and they got more rerolls, they did lose their ability to effectively ignore cover on everything, which makes them not good into this. So this is a very, very strong army. It does require someone who's very skilled with piloting, but basically what he did is he said, okay, I see what everyone else is using, and I'm going to ignore what everyone else is using, and I'm going to force them to deal with the problem I'm going to present them, which is 160 to start, but well over 200 bodies over the course of the game with high OC that you just can't kill because I'm going to be regenerating and I'm going to have uppy downy, and it's going to be really hard for you to ever make the critical charge you need to make because I'm going to be reactive moving, -2 to charge, and he played on points. I don't really necessarily know how often he killed people, although I'd be willing to bet he killed models a lot more than you might think. Those Attilan Rough Riders do hit very hard, and they are very fast. So I wouldn't be surprised if he destroyed a lot more models than you might think. But this was a massive control army that was designed with a very intelligent intent, and that was, I'm going to get mad OC absolutely everywhere, and you're not going to be able to kill me. You're going to have to focus down my units a lot more than you're expecting due to the fact that we're having a 3-up armor saving cover, which is absolutely amazing. So one of the things that you got to understand is that when you use your creativity, you can absolutely come up with really amazing concepts that can really catapult you into success in the game of Warhammer 40,000. But you have to make a plan, you have to test that plan to make sure that plan is sound, and then you have to actually test it into the meta to make sure it plays well into the meta. One thing I guarantee you Mr. Nemo did with this army is that he came up with the idea and then he play tested it. Now, this isn't the very first time we've ever seen Recon Guard. We also saw it at WTC where it had really good results, but I do believe this is the first big singles results we have seen from it, and what a heck of a singles results it is. So guys, if your creativity works, it works. You don't have to feel, bad that, oh, I have to play Gladius Space Marines or I have to play whatever. No, you can play what you want to play. You just got to make sure that you do something to counter what you know you're going to see when you go to tournaments. And that's what Nemo did here. So I encourage you to do the same. Now, I don't want you to take from this like, oh, you can take off meta list and you can ignore the meta. You can't ignore the meta, and Nemo didn't ignore the meta. He countered the meta. So use your creativity when you're making lists. That's what it's all about. Guys, shout out to him. He did an amazing job. Super great results. This was a very tough tournament. He played some of the top players in the entire world. This was not an easy path, and I can't believe he made it through 10 games over the course of 3 freaking days. I bet he's exhausted, and I hope he got a couple relaxing days as well. So we're going to take off. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and you enjoyed the breakdown. I'm going to put up the list one more time on screen for you guys just so you can check it out. And with that, I'll catch you next time. Crop on. Bye-bye.